Hello, I'm reporting here from the Transition Network Conference 2011 on day 3, or actually day 2 really, Sunday. And I'm talking with Rob Hopkins, and he's going to tell us a bit about the workshop he conducted based on the transition ingredients and the new book that's coming out, The Transition Campanion. Rob, how did you run your workshop? I hear you did it with an innovative way with the cards, is that right?
Well, I always think a lot of the best stuff in transition starts out with the acknowledgement that we don't really quite know what we're doing and we're making it all up and inviting everybody to be part of making things up. So for the last year and a half, I suppose, I've been working on the Transition Campanion, which has been a process of drawing back from transition initiatives as best as we can, their experience, their learning, what's working, what's not working, them sending their stories, their photos. It's been a fantastic collaborative process. And one of the things that what the book is built around is the idea of ingredients and tools, that there's lots of ingredients we see, and like cooking, transition groups assemble all those ingredients in different ways and make their own recipes, but there are lots of things they have in common. So what I did for the workshop was I made some cards about this big, and each one had a different ingredient on. So the first activity we did was that I just dealt out the cards and people mingled around with each other, showing each other the front of the card with a photograph and the name on it, and reading off the back the essence of that. So people got a taste of lots of the ingredients and met each other, and it was very sociable, and they got an immediate kind of immersion in that. And then the second activity was that we got people into groups, and one person in the group told the story of their transition group. And they dealt the cards out between them, and then they would sort of put them in when they felt those things were appropriate to telling the story. So what we'd like to develop out of this really is a kind of a deck of cards that transition groups could use. But the experiment was to see how did they use them, how else might they be able to use them, are they a useful tool? And what was really interesting was seeing, there were the ones they laid out to tell their story, but there were also all the ones they didn't lay out. And it was really useful for the groups to see, actually, we've got this celebrating card left. We've never done any celebrating. And we've never stopped to reflect on how we're doing. We've just ploughed on. Not many of them had done much in the way of measurement, trying to document what they were doing. So there were quite a few, and that was really interesting. And also for them to look at the ones they've got laid out in the future. And then there were other ideas that came up about actually you could use cards like that also to maybe start out with where you want to get to. What's your desired vision of transition? Then you could work back and lay them out. So it was really, really useful in terms of putting that and the feedback, and people were saying that was so useful to see that story laid out, to see the things we've missed. And what we'd like to develop out of it as time goes on is actually a really something that could be a really useful tool for groups to see where they've come from, where they are now, where they're going in the future, what extra things they could do, what resources they're missing, that kind of thing.
So sort of mixture of different cooks and different dishes coming out, and the sense that you can actually build an initiative in many different ways. Yeah, there isn't just one set way of doing things, no. or one set order.
Well, one of the things we do in the handbook, not in the handbook, in the companion, in the new book, is to tell the story of 4 different transition initiatives using those ingredients. Oh. So first they did this, then they did this, then they did this. And Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall's written the introduction for the book, and he has a beautiful thing in there about how you can give 10 people your favourite cake recipe. They'll all make a different cake. There are stages to making a cake. You can't just sort of put the flour in first and then chuck some eggs and butter in and hope it'll work. You have to follow certain stages. And that's really interesting, seeing how transition groups do go through very distinct stages. That initial stage of just being a few people running around madly showing films. And then all of a sudden you become transition wherever, and it feels like you're in different kind of terrain, So there are stages, but within that, there's all these different ingredients that we've seen out there that transition groups are using, which are really just a problem they've encountered and a solution they've come up with to it. We've seen implemented enough times to get a sense that works.
Not dangerous to break a few eggs, in fact.
No, exactly. You can't make a cake without breaking a few eggs. Yeah. So it's, I think that rather than this idea of there being 12 steps and you start here and then you work through, the idea of ingredients is much more creative, much more representative of what people are doing, much more thrilling, I think.
So it's a much more flexible process, really.
Yeah, and the idea with these cards is that you can actually start to lay out the journey, and you can start to see the things that you need and the things that you might be missing, because sometimes a group can go very much down a particular track, and they're very, very useful for saying, yeah, but what about this? What about that? You know, have you remembered to put that in? But it's also not to say every process has to include every single ingredient, because that's not going to be the case either. So it's really to see this as a collaborative, creative process, and I think that will come through really strongly in the book. And hopefully, if we can really pin down how this game might work. The other thing that was beautiful about it, there's something which a lot of people experience when they do transition, which is around a sense of serendipity that you get with it. You start the process, there's a buzz going, you think, what we really need now is somebody who knows how to, whatever, make films on iPads, and actually along comes that person, you know. And so what was great was at the end of the workshop, a guy came up and said, this is fantastic. I'm really inspired by this. This is so much possibility in this as a tool. I'm a professional games designer. So the next stage is I'm going to meet up with the missing ingredient. So we're going to meet up and really try and work out. And I think it'll be a really useful thing. You have a deck of cards, a little booklet about how to use them. I think people will hopefully find that really useful.
Perfect. And when's the Transition Campanion actually being launched?
End of September. Available from all good bookshops and probably some crap ones too.
Buy it now. Okay, thank you, Rob.